Emily, thank you very much. That was quite beautiful, and I appreciate it on behalf of all the people. Thank you very, very much. And you're welcome to come back whenever you want.
Thank you.
I'm kind of like Mrs. Rhodes. I have about 6 or 7 maybe pairs of glasses that I keep throughout the house. And I usually keep about 3 here at church. Now these are the cheapy ones. They cost $1, so don't think that I'm spending $100. But I left them all at home. So I may squint a little bit. You'll have to forgive me, but that's okay. I know this by heart, this sermon, because it's about my life, and it's about my relationship with Jesus Christ, and so that's all right. I've been studying the 23rd Psalm, or looking at it, rather, would be a better way to look at it, and for goodness sakes, there are all sorts of different ways that you can go about understanding it and appreciating it, and what I would do. There are some enjoyable, almost devotional commentaries about the 23rd Psalm that take it from the sheep's point of view, which is kind of interesting, and very helpful. And there are others that divide the Psalm into 3 different times during the day: in the morning, the noon, and the eventide, and that supposedly is what the Psalm is all about. There are many different levels and manners in which we can approach and appreciate this particular psalm. I'm just looking at it from one angle, and encourage anyone to be about what's best for them. Be that as it may, I still think that the key that unlocks an understanding and therefore a deep appreciation of this psalm is found in verse 1. And we talked last Sunday, if you remember, we talked about the first, 4 or 5 verses, first 4 verses of the psalm. And it begins this: the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Now the NIV translates it one way, it's translated other ways. This, of course, is what I grew up with, and my guess is that 90% of the people here in the fellowship, well, maybe not that now, but certainly with the King James, in this instance only, I might add, that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And as I mentioned last week, because Jesus is the good shepherd, and that all responsibilities regarding that role are upon him, and he embraces. Now, because of that, you and I really don't need anything. And I don't like to, well, I do like to talk with hyperbole sometimes, but I really know this to be true. The person who lives in Jesus Christ doesn't need anything. And that means clothing, food, shelter. You need nothing. All you need is Jesus Christ. And there is, in fact, a period at the end of that. That's all you need. He is all you need, period. And I mentioned it last week in this triumphant and majestic, soaring thought of Paul's, which I refer to quite often, and again, I refer to it quite often in my own life, because I know this is true in my own life, because this particular passage from Paul is where I have been in my life, and I know that this is true. So this is not a passage that I look up to, that I aspire to, that I hope for. This is something that I have lived out, and I know that it is true. Chapter 4, it's well worth you writing down and putting it on a piece of paper and tacking it on your wall. Chapter 4, I'll begin in verse 10. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you have renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you have been concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I am in need, Paul is saying. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, For, and this is wonderful. I am not saying this because I am in need. I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. And I know that myself. That's why I know what Paul is talking about is true. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do anything through him, Christ Jesus, that is, who gives me the strength. I will not chronicle this. I have been down and out. I have been broke. At age 35, I had nothing. I hitchhiked my way off and on across the United States, rode my bicycle off and on across the United States, had nothing except it's the closest I've ever been to Christ. In having nothing. Because what I had to do is rely completely on Christ. Took care of me. The only thing that gets in my way of a relationship with Christ are possessions. That's the only thing. It's the only thing that gets in my way. Possessions, that I mean, where I covet them, where I have to have them. Anyway, the Lord is my shepherd, and because of that, I don't need anything. Period. That's the key to understanding the 23rd Psalm. But if the first verse is well known, few passages are more quoted than verse 4. Again, King James, here we go. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. I think virtually all of us grew up with that, didn't we? I know we did. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Now, to be honest, that is, if we're going to be scholarly about this, and we have to some degree, to be honest, this is an inaccurate translation, and it should read, even though I walk through the valley of dark shadows. It's somewhat complicated, but if you look at the Hebrew, when it was being translated in the King James, they mistranslated what's called the pointing, and they translated the word, doesn't matter what it is, the Hebrew word, they translated it into the shadow of death when it should have been just into the dark shadows. But it doesn't matter, that's all right. And in keeping with the theme of the psalm, it has to do with sheep herding, and so in a way I can understand where it should be, well, it really should be, it's technically speaking, that, yea, though I walk through the valley of dark shadows, it should be that, because if you look at the context of the psalm, it's about sheep and being led, and of course the good shepherd protects them, or is with them at any rate, the flock, when it has to travel through potentially dangerous and spooky places where wild animals are a danger, or maybe people could come and snatch them away. So, so if you look at the psalm in its original situation, it really does mean the dark shadows, but it certainly can also mean the way we have translated it. So I say, nevertheless, it easily can and does refer to those dark times of the soul, excuse me, in our lives when we're threatened with death situations. Death situations. I'm not talking about hard times. I'm talking about, you know, when something's knocking on our door that we don't really like, and it's the rebirth.